Buongiorno. Welcome to Angela's Kitchen. I'm Angela and this is my kitchen. Today we're going to be making a variety of vegetables which are called verdure. The first recipe that we're going to make is eggplant parmigiana, and I don't need to translate that because everyone knows what that dish is. The second will be zucchini ripieni, which are stuffed zucchini. And the third will be a dish with funghi alla panna, which are mushrooms with a cream sauce and vermouth. First, let's start with our eggplant parmigiana. Now, when you go to your produce store, be it a supermarket or a market, a food market, and you are choosing eggplants, make sure that they are smooth, that the skin is tight, and that the eggplant is elongated. You can take one like this, for example, that is slightly bulbous. However, if you get one of the great big fat ones, what will happen will be that they will be full of seeds and will make your eggplant a lot more bitter. So when going to the supermarket and getting ready to prepare this dish, get 2 or 3 eggplants totaling about 3 pounds. So if they're 1.5 pounds each, 2. If they're a pound each, get 3. These are about a pound and a quarter each. What we do first when we start preparing our dish is to stack our zucchini in a colander, which I will show you later on. We will need a 12-inch skillet. I like a larger skillet because I can saute quickly more slices at one time. The other ingredients that we will need for this dish are 3 eggs, which will be slightly beaten. We will need 1.5 cups of flour. I have sifted it in a sifter. However, using a sieve would do as well. As a matter of fact, it's even a little faster. We also have 2 tablespoons of fresh parsley, 1 tablespoon of fresh basil. If you're using dry basil, just 1/2 teaspoon is enough. 2 cups of oil. Now this is not olive oil. This is going to be used for the frying of the eggplant slices, and I'm using corn oil, which I like to use for frying. 1 pound of whole milk mozzarella, which I have cut into pieces. This is about 3 cups of plum tomatoes, and of course you know what plum tomatoes are. The can is about 2 pounds, 3 ounces. This is the size can, and again you see the type tomatoes that we use are the pear-shaped. Now I have not used the liquor here, the liquid. I have saved it, however. I'm going to be making some beef stock, which we make in tape number 3 incidentally, and use that for my beef stock. We just want the plum tomatoes. Of course you will have some liquid accumulating, but that's okay. But most of the liquid should be removed. These are 2 cloves of garlic, which are minced, 1 cup of imported Parmigiano cheese, which you can get in your supermarket, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, which we will drizzle on top of the Parmigiana, and of course salt and pepper to taste. Now, before we start our dish, we wash our eggplant and wipe it dry, which I have already done. Then we take the end off on one end and the other end, because this is mostly skin, and that tends to be bitter. We are cutting the slices about 1/4 inch thick. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole process because I have prepared this for you. You say, what is that contraption over there? I have a colander on a dish with something heavy on top. Well, the reason for that is what we do is layer our eggplant slices in a colander, salting each layer. What happens after a half hour of waiting time, can you see this water? That is water that has been released from the eggplant, and that is the bitterness that is extracted from the eggplant, and you won't have bitter eggplant that way. What I used this for was kind of to press it. So, of course, I didn't want this iron skillet sitting on my eggplant, so I put a plate and then put this on top and iron. You know, my mother used to use her ironing, her regular iron. Since I have this, it's heavy and it fits nicely, I'm using this. But you can use anything heavy, a stone, anything at all. As a matter of fact, if you don't have anything heavy, you don't have to use anything really at all, but you won't extract as much of the bitterness out of the eggplant. So, once your eggplant has been sitting for a half hour like this with a light sprinkling of salt, we then take several sheets of paper toweling, and we want to extract whatever is left. If you can see, these are very shiny and glistening. They are still releasing some of their liquid. We want to dry these. You can do this one of two ways. Either on a paper towel. My mother used to take them and squeeze them like this. You see that? But I think this is much easier this way. And once we have them laid out this way, we will then take another piece of paper toweling and then just pat them from the top so they will have released their moisture below and above. At that time, we'll lightly whip our eggs and make the batter for our eggplant. I'm not going to add salt to the eggs or the flour for obvious reasons, since each of these slices has already been salted to extract their bitterness. Now, if you can see, you see, there's some of that liquid still at the base of your colander, and that's quite a bit of it, isn't it? See this? All right. Make room for each one. Throw this out. We don't need this anymore. I'm going to take some more paper toweling. And I use the white side and press. And this is a very important step, because otherwise you're going to have a parmigiana that is soggy, and you don't want that. There you are. You see, all of the moisture, at least as much as we can, has been extracted. Let's whip our eggs now. And then what we do is take each slice, dip it in the egg, both sides, and then flour this way. And you could either stack them on a plate, or I can put this on my acrylic board. And we're going to do this to all of the slices. I'll do several for you. Let most of that egg come off. One side, then the other side, shake off the excess, and there. Take one more, and see the width of them about 1/4 of an inch. And do the same thing to all of them until they are all covered with the egg and the flour mixture. There you are, very lightly floured. All right, now, if you would meet me at the stove, we can start our cooking process. I've put my 1.5 cups of cooking oil in my skillet here, and I have it on high. I'm going to check to see if it's hot enough by putting a piece of bread, and it is. You see how it sizzles and gets brown almost immediately. So we know that our oil is ready. Then we will put our slices of eggplant, as many as will fit. Now these will cook very, very rapidly, and because of that and because of the coating, it will absorb very little oil, and we can do the whole of the eggplant, all of them, in this one oil without needing to change it. And this is why I like a large skillet, because you can do quite a few at one time. As soon as one side has browned to a deep golden color, like so, turn it over, bearing in mind that it'll get extra cooking time in the oven for another ½ hour. There we go. Now, of course, you're going to have to adjust your heat downward if you feel that it's getting too hot. But usually between high and medium high is as low as it'll go. See that lovely color? Put it on absorbent paper. Also, instead of the fork, what you might want to use are your tongs, which are also nice, so that you don't have to pierce them. As a matter of fact, I think that's what I'm going to do. Isn't that a pretty color? Right, now if you'll join me at the counter, I'll show you how to prepare the tomato sauce and how to layer this. And I'm going to, at this time, after I turn off the heat here, preheat my oven to 350. Would you join me at the counter now, please? All right, now we're going to put our tomato into the blender. And you notice there is some liquid there, but most of it has been removed. Some of it won't matter. And I'm not going to add this that sits at the bottom here. And just give it 1 second. And that's all. I'm going to put it back here. Now we'll add our 2 cloves of garlic that have been minced. Two tablespoons of fresh parsley. 1 tablespoon of fresh basil, or a half teaspoon of the dry. Maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon, give it a large pinch, of salt, and 5 or 6 turns on the black pepper. Okay, now we mix this. We're not going to cook this sauce because it's going to cook in the oven when we give it the half-hour cooking time. Tomato really does not take long, especially when it's a plain sauce like this, which we learned in our tape number 1, which is marinara sauce. This is essentially the same thing, except that it's going to be cooking in the eggplant mixture instead of in its own dish. All right, what we do next is take our eggplant and put 1 layer of the eggplant at the base of the casserole, overlapping them somewhat, like so. All right, like that. Then we take some tomato and put a little bit on each one. We don't want to drown our eggplant parmigiana in tomato. That is a mistake. And kind of flatten your tomato onto each slice, like so. Then we take our mozzarella and cover each slice with the mozzarella. You can also grate this on a cheese grater, but I like the thickness of the mozzarella. I really like the taste of it. And what we're doing is covering most of the slice, maybe with 1.5 pieces each, like so. Then we take our parmigiana, and be generous with the parmigiana, like this. Then you are ready for your next layer. And we're going to continue doing this till we get to the top. Again, we take the tomato, and if you see, it's coarsely chopped. I just gave it maybe a second and a half in the blender. And this has all of your spices that you want in it, your basil, your parsley, your garlic, your salt, and your pepper. You see, that looks like your mozzarella. Remember also to use your whole milk mozzarella, because the skimmed mozzarella, once it gets it melts and gets back to, gets cold, is like rubber. This doesn't happen with your whole milk. Another nice thing about parmigiana is that it probably tastes even better the next day. All right, there you go. And with your being generous with the parmigiana. Then, the top layer will be a layer of the eggplant parmigiana with the tomato and another sprinkling of your parmigiana cheese, and with the 2 tablespoons of olive oil that we had here, we drizzle it on top. So what you bear in mind is this goes to the top, the parmigiana cheese on the top layer, and the tomato. We don't use the mozzarella on the top layer. So that the reason for that being that if it gets crusty and brown, the mozzarella is going to be hard, and we don't want that. We want all the softness inside. So that is essentially what we would do. Layer it to the top exactly as I have done until you've run out of eggplant slices. What I like to do is keep my prettiest slices for the top, of course. Now, if we go to the oven will have been preheated to 350 degrees, and it will bake, the eggplant parmigiana will bake for just 30 minutes, no more. Let it stand 15 minutes before serving. As I said, I had prepared another eggplant parmigiana casserole for you. The 30 minutes are up, and I'm going to take it out now. And here we are, eggplant parmigiana. Isn't that beautiful? With a slice of crusty bread and a glass of wine, it's a beautiful dish. Vegetarian, not any meat in that at all, and very hearty. Our next dish will be zucchini ripieni al forno, which are stuffed zucchini which will be baked. For this we will need 3 zucchini. These are about medium-sized. Again, they should be smooth, not puckered, shiny, and hard to the touch. If they're soft, it means that they're old and you don't want them. We will need 3 of them because we're going to cut them in half, and this will serve 6 people. Before we start working with the zucchini, however, I've used a 3-quart pot because these can be placed in the 3-quart pot easily. Whichever pan you have, which will accommodate your 3 zucchini, is fine. Enough water just to cover. This is a 3-quart pot, maybe 1.5 quarts will be enough water just to cover. Let the water come to a boil, placing a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and let it blanch for just 3 minutes. Once it has boiled for 3 minutes, remove them immediately into some ice water or very, very cold water to cool them rapidly so that they don't continue cooking. I use ice cubes, and that works fine with a little bit of water in a bowl, and that works fine. Now, I have parboiled these. These have already been blanched. Next, we will need 6 slices of crustless bread. Now, if you're using the Italian bread, 6 thin slices would be enough. This was a French bread, as you see, so I've made the slices rather thick. Or you can use your plain American bread, but make sure that the crusts have been removed. What we do with that is that we bathe it in milk for about 5 minutes, which I will do now. This is a 1/2 cup of milk, and I am going to put my bread in this little plate here and let it absorb the milk for about 5 minutes while we go on to the other ingredients. There we are. Here we have 3 tablespoons of Parmigiana cheese, 1 egg, which we will slightly beat, and here we have 1 tablespoon of parsley, a pinch of margarine. Margarine is a very interesting spice. It's something like oregano, only a little more delicate, and all we want is a teeny tiny pinch, and that's exactly what I mean when you go open your little bottle. Take a nice healthy pinch. Salt and pepper to taste. This is 2 tablespoons of prosciutto ham. However, if you don't find it, you can use your regular either Smithfield ham or your boiled ham would be fine. 2 tablespoons of that. This is 1/2 cup of fontina cheese. If you can't find fontina cheese, they usually have them in wedges like this in your supermarket, and most of them do have it near the mozzarella, near your cheddar cheeses. If for some reason they do not have fontina cheese, provolone cheese would be just as good, and you know that can be gotten very easily. This is 1 tablespoon of chopped walnuts, which we'll sprinkle over the whole thing. 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and from this I will take 1 teaspoon of olive oil to grease my baking dish. All right, let's go back to our zucchini now. I take my zucchini and with my knife cut off the end. And then cut them in half like so. Now these have been blanched for 3 minutes, but they're still nice and firm. Cut off the end if it's not quite pretty. There usually is a little seed base to it from where this one's okay. All right. What I use is a grapefruit knife, which works beautifully for this. What we do is just go in about 1/4 of an inch, being careful not to injure the skin, the outer skin. And this works better than an ordinary paring knife because it is curved. And then go toward the center in a straight line all the way across until you have the pulp, which we will reserve because we're going to be using it. And we're going to do this to every one of them. Again, 1/4 of an inch in, like so. And you'll find where the seeds are about exactly 1/4 of an inch inside the outer pulp. So it's very easy to use that as a guide. Again, you see the skin has not been bruised. And we're going to do this to all of them. All right, you notice all of the pulp has been scooped out of the zucchini. What we're going to do now is use this pulp for part of our stuffing. Remember, the zucchini were blanched in lightly salted water, but we are going to use a little more salt because, as you know, zucchini are quite bland. Excuse me. Let's get rid of this. Next, we're going to take our bread and squeeze out as much milk as we can. All right. Add it to the pulp. Next, you can take 2 knives or a fork and knife and just break this up. And mix it. We then add our parmigiana. Do that with a fork. Then we're going to whip our egg. Just slightly beaten, just so that the the yolk and the white mingle a little bit. And mix that. Until the egg is nicely absorbed. Take a few minutes, not even that long. There. Next we will add our parsley, pinch of margarine, and mix. Then salt and pepper to taste. Always go scooping from the bottom, because that's where your liquids lie. Again, a nice pinch of salt, pepper, mix. Then we will add our 2 tablespoons of either prosciutto or ham, which of course you have cut into small pieces, like so. Isn't that pretty? All right, this will be our stuffing for the zucchini. We are going to place the zucchini into our baking dish, and again it should be the size large enough to accommodate the zucchini depending upon their size. So we have a teaspoon of olive oil that we're putting into the baking pan to grease it. You really don't want very much, do you? There. Next, tablespoon so we can stuff the zucchini. Now what I'm going to do is use the fontina cheese and place the fontina cheese at the base of each zucchini. This has a lovely flavor, fontina cheese. If you've never had it, it really is nice. This. Make sure that each one has enough of the cheese until it's finished. That was a half cup of fontina. Now we're going to add the stuffing. Start with 1 tablespoon, nice rounded tablespoon. And we'll see how far it goes. If we need to add more, we will. The zucchini are all stuffed now, and we're going to place them. If the head is on one end, we'll turn the other one around this way because they'll fit better. Now you notice the rounded surface is here, so I'm turning the other zucchini this way, and you'll find that they will fit much more comfortably in the baking dish. Now I have turned the oven on to 350. We're going to place the zucchini in the oven for 30 minutes. I'm going to drizzle the oil over them now, and the last 15 minutes of baking I'm going to sprinkle the walnuts. So I'm going to time it for 30 minutes, but within 15 minutes before cooking time I'm going to sprinkle the walnuts. We don't put it at the beginning because otherwise they'll get too brown. So here goes the oil. And you notice that's less than a tablespoon for the whole thing, so there's very little oil if you're watching calories. All right, our oven is at 350. And I'm timing it for 30 minutes. We have 15 more minutes on our cooking time, and if you remember, I said this is when we add our crushed walnuts, which is what I'm doing now. Just a sprinkling on each one. There we go. And we'll put it back for another 15 minutes, and when our time is up, they'll be ready. Here we go. 30 minutes are up on the zucchini. Turn off the oven. And let's take out that lovely zucchini. Here we are. Allora, zucchini ripieni al forno. And they're just sizzling here. You can hear them. The cheese is melted and the flavors have mingled. And the little top is crusty with the walnuts, and it's just delightful. All right, next we're going to make funghi alla panna con vermouth, which is creamed mushrooms with vermouth. First, we will need 1.5 pounds of fresh mushrooms. Now, this is a fresh mushroom. If you look underneath, the stem is hard, the cap is hard. They're easy to clean. They don't fall apart in your hand. It's not water-laden. You see that I can rub this and nothing will happen. Now, what I've done here, of course, is skinned it. Whenever I make a cream sauce with mushrooms, I like to peel them. First, we remove the stem. And I have cleaned this just with the paper towel. If it doesn't come clean enough that way, we put it immediately under cold water and take it out immediately. Do never soak your mushrooms, because you'll have a soppy mess when you put them to the heat. Now, what I do is remove the stem, and when, as I say, it's a cream sauce, I like to peel it. And I also use white pepper for the same reason. You want a lovely white sauce with no little black flakes. So here you see, it peels very, very easily. You get it from the underside and flip it up with your nail or with a knife. And you'll have a lovely white mushroom. There. It's kind of fun to do. I don't mind it at all. And if there should be some little bits of skin that adheres, that's perfectly all right. And we're cutting these into about 1/2-inch pieces like so. See how lovely and white that is? All right, so it's 1.5 pounds of mushrooms cut into 1/2-inch slices. If it's a small mushroom, smaller than I had, of course, just cut them in half. We have 2 shallots that have been minced, and you know what shallots are. It's a cross between, it tastes like a cross between garlic and onion. We have 2.5 tablespoons of sweet butter. We have 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. This is 1/2 teaspoon of sage, salt and white pepper to taste, a 1/2 cup of heavy cream, and 1/3 of a cup of vermouth. Now, would you join me at the stove, please? With the heat on high, when the butter starts to bubble, it means that it's ready for cooking, and I'm going to add my 2 shallots. And at the same time, the mushrooms. Now this is a 12-inch skillet. And continue cooking on high until you can see that all of the fat has been absorbed by the mushrooms. The total time for this is about 7 minutes. And make sure again that you scoop from underneath and turn over so each of them will touch the butter and oil combination, as well as helping the shallots disperse through the pan. Again, this is always on high. If you turn your heat low, mushrooms release their liquid, which is a black inky substance, which is not very pretty to look at. And remember, mushrooms really don't need to be cooked that long since we can eat them raw. They just need to be warmed through. And just look at the bottom of the pan. This should take about a minute and a half to absorb all of the fat. And it starts becoming aromatic at that time. All right, next, I'm going to add my salt and white pepper. Again, a pinch of salt. About 6 thrusts of pepper since it's for 6 people. And this is our half teaspoon of sage, which we add at this time too, and mix. Next, we're going to add our vermouth. This will cook for about 3 minutes, like this. When all of the vermouth, or most of it, is absorbed, at that time we will add the whipping cream for about 3 minutes. As I said, 7.5 minutes total time, until it thickens somewhat. And that's all there is to the dish, and it is absolutely delicious. This is always on high, remember. At the point where the liquor is beginning to glaze, such as this, is when we add the cream. And always on high. And this will take about another 3 minutes for the cream to thicken somewhat. And that will be the completed cooking time. Okay, it has to be like 2 minutes before the zucchini time. It's beginning to thicken already, as you can see. Our cream has nicely thickened and have been absorbed somewhat, and we're going to place it in a serving plate. There you are. Funghi alla panna con vermouth. Mushrooms with cream and vermouth. And if you could just smell this aroma, it's delightful. All right, now here are our vegetable dishes for today. Our eggplant parmigiana, our zucchini ripieni al forno, and our funghi alla panna con vermouth. Isn't this a lovely combination of foods? 3 different vegetables that can be used, well, 2 of them at least can be used as entrees, the parmigiana and the zucchini al forno. Allora, buon appetito e alla prossima volta. Ciao!